today, me and Hunter are going to break down our top 10 UFC cards of all time, with 300 and 299 being two of the top 5 highest gates ever in UFC history. I thought this would be a good time to make our list for the top 10 fight cards in UFC history. This is a completely subjective list. Don't get too angry in the comments if we didn't mention a card that you really, really like. Make sure you go down in the comments. Let us know, what are your top 5, what are your top 10 cards of all time. And yeah, we do have a couple honorable mentions to go over today as well, because we both had cards that we wanted to make the list, but we couldn't agree on it. So let's talk about 241. That's the one that just didn't make the cut.
Yeah, 241, it was a great card. I had a lot of good memories with it, especially with, we went to the bar, the Canadian Brew House, for those who don't know. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the hot spot in Western Canada for a lot of small towns.
And this was in 2019, I should also mention. And I'll run through the card real quick, and then we'll get into our...
Sounds good.
So on this card, this was a pretty stacked card. We started out the night, well, the prelims aren't that crazy, but I'll mention them anyways. Mazo versus Dobson, Kang versus Davis, Shivers versus Esquilibel. I'm going to butcher so many names today. I apologize. You guys let me know in the comments.
Please count them.
I'm aware. Yeah.
Do an enunciation count.
I'm aware that I butcher a lot of names, so I apologize. Bermudez versus Kenny kicked off the ESPN prelims, and then we had Gaios versus Close, Sandhagen as Sunsao. That was kind of an underrated fight on that card. And then Smith versus Worthy. And then we get into the main card where we had Brunson and Heinisch, Yusuf and Benitez, Costa and Romero, Pettis and Diaz, and of course Cormier versus Stipe 2. So yeah, we watched that one at the Brewhouse 2019. We were both just legal to drink here in Canada, and yeah, that was a fun fight to watch, especially that main card.
Yeah, I really liked how it opened up with Derek Brunson beating Ian Heinisch, because I think just previous to that, a couple fights prior, he beat another up-and-comer, Edmund Shabazian, where he wasn't supposed to beat him, and he beat this young whippersnapper. Same thing, Ian Heinisch beats him, and at this point, everybody knows that follows the UFC, they're trying to get rid of Derek Brunson, but he keeps on winning.
Yeah.
So that was fun to watch, as like watching the older guy win. I always love that. And Sadiq Yusuf, I don't really remember that fight. Looks like he got a first round knockout, which is good for him. But I think that was kind of one of the first fight cards that he started to really make a name in the UFC, especially with a first round knockout in the featherweight division.
I remember just before this card happened, you were telling me about him. You're like, keep an eye on this kid. Because I was like, who's this guy on the main card? I've never seen him fight. But yeah, I'm a big fan of him now.
Yeah. And then also the feature fight. Yoel Romero versus Paulo Costa. An all-time classic.
Yeah, that didn't upset. That was amazing.
That's when we found out that Paulo Costa is kind of a funny lad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just going in there, saluting, and then just going bang, bang, bang.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a perfect matchup. I mean, even with Yoel being like almost 45, I'd love to see that run back again, because that was a close fight. That was a very close fight.
And also, Paulo Costa fought exactly how Sean Strickland talks.
Yeah.
You know, Sean Strickland's always like nipple to nipple, wiener to wiener. I don't want to say the bad word, but you get it. And, you know, but he never actually fights that way. Paulo Costa, my God.
Yeah.
He was the ultimate warrior in there. It was, I didn't think of him as being a tough guy, having a good chin or anything, because we just kind of seen him steamroll everybody. And the fight before that, he beats Uriah Hall, but he hit him in the nuts right before then. And in my head, because I was a Uriah Hall fan, it's like, if you didn't hit him in the junk, you would have won. But after seeing this fight and knowing how good Yoel Romero is, especially coming off those Whitaker fights, it was amazing to see. And he became a fan favorite shortly after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was amazing. That's also where we got tongue Yoel, too. He kept putting his tongue out during that fight.
Yeah, that's right.
Silly. And then the co-main, that was amazing as well.
Yeah, I don't think anybody expected Nate Diaz to dominate this fight. Because most fight fans know, or sorry, I should say older fight fans, I'm very critical of Nate Diaz.
Same. Yeah.
I don't think he's a great fighter. but he's got a great personality, and he can make scrappy fights with technical fighters. And, well, Anthony Pettis is beyond his prime at this point, and he just put it to him. I just remember the whole bar going, let's go! Like, everybody's behind Nate Diaz. Everybody loves the Diaz army.
Yeah.
And for him to take that match, beat Anthony Pettis at 170, wow. I was actually astonished, and he looked phenomenal. It was kind of like when he fought Michael Johnson, where he has a good performance every 10 fights, it feels like. Nate Diaz, where he looks like he is like a top fighter. But that was a fun one to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then that main event, man. Oh, my God. I mean, going into that, I was, like, dead certain. DC's winning this. Like, of course, there's no other way this could play out. We're in the bar. Pretty much everybody's on the side of DC except for Hunter sitting there. And he's like, I got Stipe.
Stiopic.
And then you took a bet with somebody.
Yeah, some drunk guy comes up to me. He's like, hey, oh, yeah, I hear you got Stipe. I'm like, yeah, I do. He's like, oh, why don't we put $50 on it, all right? I'm like, sounds good to me. And DC whips this shite out of Stipe.
Beating him down.
For the first round. 2 rounds. And I'm going, oh, God. Going into the third round, Buddy comes up to me. He's like, you want to double it? I'm like, no, I don't. All of a sudden, Stipe starts landing those body shots. I go, no way. The tides are turning. I would even give DC that third round because it wasn't up until like the last minute and a half. Suddenly, Stipe's finding solar plexus. Bam, bam, getting in there. In the fourth round. Wow. That setup, going body, head, and then just flooring him.
Yep.
Oh, I still think that's the greatest heavyweight fight of all time.
It's up there.
In UFC, I think there's some Royd-era Pride heavyweight fights that could beat it, like Fedor versus Mirko Cro Cop.
Yeah.
I mean, for the modern day and age, I believe that is the most complete, best heavyweight fight.
Yeah, my favorite trilogy for sure. The jig at the end was iconic.
Oh my God, that dance?
Yeah.
I wouldn't stop doing that dance for like 2 years.
Yeah, that was amazing. Okay, we should move on to the next one. We're going to make this a long-ass video. Okay, this next one I'll run through a little bit quicker because this is the one that I wanted to put on the list. Hunter didn't agree. Mm-hmm. I kind of agree with his breakdown of it. It was UFC 239. So a reason why I like this card was it was July of 2019. I was in Florida watching this, so I was in a really nice Airbnb with my family, and I was watching these alone in my room. Everybody else was watching a movie or something. I'll quickly run through the card, and then I'll talk about what I liked on the main event. But we had Avila versus Kinzad. We had Renkutri versus oh my god
just call him Ismail versus Chance, Edmund Shabazian versus Jack Marshme.
Thank you.
Alejandro Perez
versus Song. We had Gadelia Marcos. That was a banger. I'm just kidding. Vera Hernandez. We had Arnold Allen was on that card versus Melendez. I actually really liked that fight.
I love that fight.
That showed me just how good Arnold Allen was. Then we had Sanchez Chiesa. Fights like that are why I understand you didn't want to put it on the list. Yep. We had Blachowicz Rockhold, which I thought was awesome. I just thought the way Rockhold was fighting it, and then the ending was. I like to shit on Luke. He likes Luke a little bit more. So
Luke is my king. You guys don't know how happy I was seeing him knock out Joe Schilling this weekend. All right.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we'll move past that.
I liked
that was a good fight, though. That was a good fight.
Yeah, it was a banger for while it lasted. And then we had, in my opinion, still the craziest moment in UFC history. Now it's tied with another moment that we'll talk about later in this video. But we had the Ben Askren knee, of course. Watching that in my room, like 7 seconds, like it was just crazy. So I like ran out to my uncle and I was showing him. He has no interest in fighting at all, but even he was like, wow, that just happened. Yeah, anyways, we get to the Nunes-Holm fight. I was a big fan of Nunes and Holm, so going into it, I didn't really care who won. If it was a Holm upset, I would have been happy, but Nunes does Holly Holm to Holm, knocks her out with the head kick.
Thank God.
Beautiful. And then we get to my favorite fighter, John Jones, in the main event. Granted, not the best John Jones performance. It went to a split decision. A lot of people, well, not a lot of people, some people thought that he lost it, but it was a pretty boring fight. Hunter was saying it was a bit lackluster to end the night, which is fair. It was just kind of a leg kick battle where one guy blew out 2 of his knees and then couldn't really fight in the last 2 rounds. So I understand that. For me, being a John Jones fan, I thought it was a masterclass of like checking leg kicks and playing the distance. But it was a very close fight for John. And yeah, I really liked that card. I know you found it a little bit lackluster, but
I will say, like, the card was really good up until the main event.
yeah,
I
fair.
feel like the main event sucked so much wind out of it that I couldn't put it in the top 10.
Yeah.
Especially when John Jones, it was the most frustrating John Jones performance I'd ever watched because he knew he had a wounded animal in front of him that couldn't really move. And Jones decided to go, I'm going to just practice. It looked like he was just in sparring and just doing as little as possible and trying to, like, he's almost like trying to practice reactions in a real fight. But it didn't even, it just felt like training. It didn't even feel like he was trying to fight.
Yeah.
Because he thought he was so far ahead. And as the audience member, I'm going, what the hell are you doing? You might lose this fight.
Yeah,
so
I understand.
Yeah.
Santos was very scary at the time with his power. I do understand that criticism, though. Just being a John fan, I was in it, but I understand why like 99% of people would have been like, this is boring.
But at number 10, this
10,
is a good John Jones performance.
Yes.
One of my favorites.
Yeah, it's maybe my favorite John Jones fight of all time. It's at number 10, we have UFC 232, which happened in December 29th of 2018. 2018 is actually the year that pops up the most on our list, so you can kind of tell when we were like most into the sport.
And that's funny because a lot of people say 2016 is the best year, but I feel like technique-wise, what kind of fights we're getting, 2018, even 17 were some of the best fight cards in my opinion.
Yeah.
But it's also, we were both into the UFC so much longer before McGregor came onto the scene, where I didn't even really know who McGregor was up until he was fighting for the belt, really.
Yeah, a couple of fights before the belt, you're like, oh, who's this guy? But
yeah,
so to quickly run through this fight card, we started out with Keller, Jackson, Wood, Ewell. We had Hall, Lewis, Melender, Barha,
Curtis Millender.
We had Penn versus Hall, absolute classic. We had Silva de Andre versus Jan. We had Zingano, Anderson. Actually, that was kind of an important fight at the time. We had Arlovsky, Harris. We had Volkanovski, Mendez. That was also a very important fight at the time. Latifi, Anderson, Condit, Chiesa, Cyborg, Nunes, and of course, John Jones versus Gustafsson. I mean, what a stacked card. And it delivered, too. A lot of those fights were, like, really, really good.
So, as you guys could probably figure out, I'm a guy that goes on Fight Pass prelims. I like to watch those fights.
Mm-hmm.
And I already told you guys I love Uriah Hall. So Uriah Hall was on the early prelims. This is a big early prelims card.
Yeah.
This is 1, 2, 3, 4 early prelim fights.
And they're all, like, really good fights.
Yeah.
Like, no heavyweights, no... some people don't like the women's fights. I don't mind, but...
But Uriah Hall versus Bevon Lewis. This is kind of like... Uriah Hall is trying to figure things out, and he's fighting differently at this time. And I was super happy for him because he was losing that first round really badly. And even the second round, he was losing moments, and then he gets that knockout. He had a couple fights like that in that time. So that was really nice to see in the early prelims. Then we get to the regular prelims, opening up BJ Penn versus Ryan Hall. One of the most insane submissions you can pull off.
Yeah.
An Eminari roll?
Yeah.
Right to a heel hook?
Yeah.
And he pulls it off against BJ Penn, who was... Now, jiu-jitsu has evolved very much since BJ Penn was winning championships and got his black belt in 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
But BJ Penn is one of the best jiu-jitsu athletes that have joined the UFC. And for him to get caught in an Eminari roll and heel hooked, that just shows you the level that Ryan Hall was at, and that people almost expect it from Ryan Hall going forward from that point.
Yeah, because BJ turned into that too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
nasty. That's when we thought Hall was going to maybe do that to everybody, and then Ilya.
And I believe Megan Anderson, this was her debut, or maybe her second fight in the
Possibly,
UFC.
I can't remember.
When
Somebody
she
will
beat
correct us.
Kat Zingano.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big time. That was a big deal at the time for Megan Anderson to come into the UFC and beat a top a top contender.
A
because
veteran, too.
Yeah, because there's nobody at, I believe this was at 145. Yeah, women's featherweight.
She can't make
Because it was a big deal for the featherweight division to get some top contenders.
Yeah.
And Megan Anderson comes in, Invicta FC, big deal. She beats Ngannou. I'm pretty sure she got a title shot like after this fight too. That was an important fight. And then I guess the next one would be Chad Mendes versus Volkanovski. Because Volkanovski, that was his coming out party.
Yeah.
Everybody knew Chad Mendes is great. He just came off his suspension. He just had a great first-round knockout in the fight previous to this. All of a sudden, we get this Australian dog coming out of nowhere. And Chad puts it to him in the first round. And then near the end, Volkanovski starts putting it together. And mind you, he had hair at this time. You wouldn't even recognize him at this point. And then he comes back in the second round. And the boxing and just tiring out Chad Mendes and then knocking him out was just... I couldn't believe it, especially a guy around Chad's size. Mm-hmm. You're going, how good is this Volkanovski dude? Like, I'm a fan.
After that, I'm like, oh, he's the evolved version of Mendes. That's really what I saw in that one. Any other ones you want to highlight?
Well, I guess the other ones would be...
Two main ones?
Carlos Condit versus Chiesa. That's when we really found out Condit doesn't have it anymore.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say about that. Chris Cyborg versus Amanda Nunes.
I loved that. I was so happy.
So happy to see freaking Vanderlei and Hills get knocked out.
Yeah. That was amazing. I did not want Cyborg to win. I was so bought into the Nunes legacy, and then she beat my favorite female fighter, Shevchenko, so I'm like, Nunes, you got to do this, and it's glorious. Yeah. And couldn't have been more dominant. We didn't need to run it back. It was, loved that.
Also, take away the John Jones Gustafsson 2. Take her away.
Yeah. That was, what a performance. Is that his most dominant performance? It's up there.
It's, the only one that's maybe more dominant at the championship level would be when he beat Shogun.
Yeah, his early career aside, the reason why I'd say this one's probably the most dominant is if you look at the first fight and how close that was. Now, we don't think it's that close. We do score it pretty comfortably for John, but that is a very, very close fight, and it was a war, and it was the first time John has ever been in a war.
Bled.
Yeah, and then he comes back, and I think this was off of some layoff, too. I mean, he had the Smith fight.
So, I believe this was after he knocked out DC and then popped for the picograms. Mm-hmm. And then DC already moved up to heavyweight by then. And then he was fighting for the belt. Yeah. Again.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember where this is in the timeline. But yeah, to come back and then to have a flawless performance against Gustafsson. Now, some can argue that Gustafsson was starting to get a little bit over the hill at the time. He still looked really sharp in this fight. I think John was just that ahead of him. I think John looked back at that fight, watched it 100 times. Seriously, probably he watched that first fight 100 times because he knew everything. I mean, he picked him apart. And for him to do that, especially at his age, too, I mean, this is past kind of the John Jones hype prime. This is him kind of getting into his second prime. We're like, can he really stay at the top anymore? And it's yes, of course. He's still the best fighter on the planet. So for me, it was just him re-cementing his name as the best fighter on the planet, and it's one of his most dominant performances of all time.
And one of the most vicious ground poundings I've ever seen.
Yeah, that was definitely Habib-like.
He was mean.
Yeah.
John, why do you got to be so mean?
Why can't you fight like that every fight? I mean, we get the Gons, we get the Gustafssons, and then we get the Santos and the Reyes fights, and it's just confusing because, I don't know. Anyways, let's move on to number 9 so this video isn't 5 hours long. UFC 236, April 13th, 2019. This was an awesome card. I think we watched this one at Shoeless Joe's, so I'm going to quickly run through it. Davis versus Costa, Mueller versus Bothwell, Jackson versus some of these names they're trying to I'm not even gonna try that one.
Millender versus Muhammad
Bilal, Taha versus Salmon, Griffith versus Imadev.
Griffith? It's Griffin.
Same thing. Reyes versus Pantoja. Hey, I got Pantoja right.
Yeah.
Turner versus Frivola. those last two are probably the only ones on the prelims I care about. And then this main event, this main event here, this main card. St. Preux versus Krylov. Joe Bain versus Grant. Anders versus Roundtree. We got to talk about that Roundtree performance. And then we had 2 of the fights of the year on the same card. This is what made this card so special to me. We had 2 fight of the years back to back. We had Kelvin Gastelum versus Adesanya. Adesanya's toughest fight, arguably. And then Holloway versus Poirier, which, I mean, to this day, it's a little bit of a coin flip for me. That fight was perfect. It's one of my top 3, top 5 fights of all time. That's a big reason why it's number so high on my list. So yeah, which ones do you want to shout out? I think Pantoja, that's a little bit earlier in his career.
Yeah, it's at that point where nobody really... It was at that weird lull point at 125 where we didn't know if it was going to go away or not.
Yeah.
So nobody really paid attention. I just remember it was impressive that he beat Wilson Hayes in the first round. But at that point, I went to the UFC in Edmonton the first time they came around. And I'd already seen Henry Cejudo knock him out in the second round. So I knew Wilson Hayes was he was a little bit over the hill, but he's still, at that time, pretty good fighter. So, good for Pantoja, but we didn't really follow him back then. But yeah. Krylov versus St. Preux. St. Preux was, he was only a couple fights removed from fighting John Jones and went 5 rounds with him with a broken arm. So that kind of added to his lore, I guess.
Yeah.
And with Krylov coming in and submitting him in the first round, I don't remember what he submitted him with, but I just remember vaguely that was kind of a big deal. We're going, whoa. Because, St. Preux, how many Von Flus has he got? he's no slouch on the ground.
It's the OSP choke now, yeah.
Yeah. And then we go ahead, Alan Jouban, Dwight Grant. I don't really know why Jouban was on the main card of this, to be honest. Maybe because he's just handsome. But that's about it.
Yeah, and then...
But this was the highlight.
Yeah.
Right here. For a feature, anything that wasn't the main or co-main event, this was the fight to watch. Khalil Roundtree versus Eric Anders. Because Eric Anders, I think he was just coming off 1, maybe 2 losses. He just went up to light heavyweight. He was a really good prospect at this time. And Khalil Roundtree, after he got knocked out by Johnny Walker in 40 seconds, he moved to Thailand, trained. He pretty much eat, sleep, breathe.
Yeah, he lived it.
Muay Thai. Yeah. He was Muay Thai.
Yeah.
For 6 months, 9 months, whatever it was.
Yeah.
He even knows how to speak Thai.
There's a great Joe Rogan podcast with him. If you guys want to hear more about that story, he kind of details the whole story. I don't know which episode it is. I might throw it up on screen here, but you guys can check that out if you want the whole story. But yeah.
But anyway, the leg kicks, the striking, they're going, hey! The noises, everything was on point. And he didn't veer off from the game plan in the slightest. He could have gotten the knockout a couple of times.
Yeah.
But it was almost more impressive that he didn't lose focus. It was one of those performances where you go, wow, the sky's the limit for this guy.
Yeah.
And now it's actually coming to fruition.
Yeah.
He's gotten to that level where he's going to be fighting Jamal Hill soon.
Yeah.
Which is very impressive. And I think that's a very winnable fight. And I think everybody wants to watch him fight Pereira.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, I think you should cover Kevin Gastelum versus Israel Adesanya.
Yeah, going into that fight, I had no expectations that the fat little Mexican was going to put on this much of a fight. I seriously didn't. I just kind of saw him as a less skilled Henry Cejudo at 185. But yeah, he's got a gas tank and he has a chin, and that showed in this fight. This is the definition of heart. And Izzy, we all kind of shit on Izzy now. He's starting to lose some fans, but I have to admit, the way he adjusted in this fight, especially before that 5th round when he's saying, I'm willing to die for this, and the way he made the adjustments to win that final round. That final round was round of the year. It was either that one or the 4th round where they, knocked each other down.
Honestly, that's got to be one of the greatest moments in UFC. And
Yeah.
he's like, I'm willing to die looking straight across the
Gave me
cage.
chills. It was like Rory Robbie again. It was, and yeah, just a spectacular performance. That's a fight that if you haven't seen it, go watch it. If you've seen it, go rewatch it. I mean, it's an amazing fight. And then there's like no way you could have topped it, but it did get topped. Somehow that main fight was just,
Yeah.
is
I know for me
spectacular.
and you, the main card.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
the main fight.
Yeah, some people might have seen the Izzy fight with like the dramatic knockdowns and stuff as more entertaining, but for us, like the technical boxing in that main event, oh my lord.
Hey, by the way, we are more critical of new fighters because we have been watching the UFC for so long.
Yeah.
So we like to compare Adesanya to Silva. So,
Yeah,
but
and Hall.
Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier. This new breed of 155s, you can't really compare it to the old breed.
Mm-hmm.
So I say right now 155 is the best division.
Yeah.
And this showed why. When you have Dustin Poirier, who's never actually grabbed a real championship, being this popular and this good, and same as Max Holloway, they encompassed what being a badass mofo is.
Yeah.
In 5 rounds. Not stopping, never quitting, almost wanting to quit, and just continuing to go. No matter... their body's telling them no, but their mind is just barely pushing them through it.
Yeah, the mentalities that clash, just two unbreakable mentalities coming together, two amazing boxers, somebody who's a little bit more volume and the other one that's, a little bit more combination heavy. It was perfect. Like I loved that fight. I still to this day think you could score it for Max if you want to. Yeah. On to the next one.
Yeah.
Holy.
I could
It's crazy that we're only at 9. Like there's 8 cards better than this. But next up, I would probably put this in my top 5 arguably just because of the weight of it and how much buildup there was. Oh my lord. But at number 8, we have UFC 229, which took place October 6, 2018. The prelim started out with LaFleur and Martin, Maynard and Lentz, and then we had Lazenberg and Kunitsaya, Holtzman and Patrick, Ladd and Ivinger, Luque and Turner, Pettis and Formiga, and then we had Watterson, Herrig, we can skip that one, Lewis, Volkov, St. Preux, Reyes, Ferguson, Pettis, and of course, Habib versus Connor. I can't wait to talk about that one.
I will say, this early prelims and prelims is one of my favorite on any fight card, especially with Anthony Rocco Martin. I was starting to hear about him. He's not really a thing anymore, but he was kind of like a fringe, like, he might break the top 10 in a welterweight at one point, especially fighting Ryan LaFleur. He was highly doubted at that time. And for him to knock out Ryan LaFleur, and Anthony Rocco Martin is kind of known as a submission guy, that showed, like, wow, this is really impressive. And I just really enjoyed that first fight. Same as Nick Lentz versus Gray Maynard. Because Gray Maynard, no matter what, those wars with Frankie Edgar, you always have to respect his name.
Yeah, go back and watch those if you haven't. My God,
wow.
So many young fight fans haven't seen those fights.
Oh my God. Frankie Edgar versus Gray Maynard, 1, 2, and 3. Well, skip the first one, just 2 and 3 you really need. But yeah, Nick Lentz coming in there and beating Gray Maynard. That was fun to watch. I was a big Nick Lentz fan for a little bit. I really liked his jiu-jitsu. And then Yana Santos versus Lena Landsberg. That was a pretty good bantamweight fight for women's. There are also like 2 newer names that people really they actually started to like them. And going into the regular prelims, nothing really standing out. Like even Vicente Luque and Jalen Turner were both outside of the top 15. Mm-hmm. And this was Jalen Turner's first fight in the UFC, I believe, or at least at welterweight. He gets knocked out by Vicente Luque. Formiga versus Pettis, that was a big deal. Mm-hmm. Pettis was, if he was to win this fight, he gets the title shot. Mm-hmm. And Formiga was able to take him down, just hit him enough in the stand-up, but just clinch and take him down enough to win the fight. And that pretty much blew all the wind out of the sails of Pettis. And
Yeah.
I believe after this fight, he may have had one more, because I believe he beat Benavidez before this fight, loses to Formiga, and goes to Bellator.
Yeah. Where he had some
So-
success, but Sergio was one of my favorite flyweights forever. I mean, he's one of the only ones that was entertaining.
Yeah. And then we go to the main card. Derek Lewis versus Alexander Volkov. My balls was hot. That was an insane fight. It was one-way traffic. It wasn't even entertaining. It was more of just watching Derek Lewis get beat up for 3 rounds. And then, what was it? I'm just looking at the time. 12 seconds left. It probably at the 16-second mark. Derek Lewis
Goes nuclear.
lands the frickin'... Yeah, screw the H-bomb. That was the frickin' L-bomb. Drops the Lewis hammer on him. Boom!
Yeah.
Knocks out that Russian mother effer. And he has one of the greatest post-fight speeches. Taking his pants off. Joe Rogan asked him, "Why'd you take your pants off?" He's like, "My balls was hot." He gains 800,000 followers overnight. All of a sudden, he's one of the top followed
Gets so many
fighters.
fights that maybe he shouldn't have gotten because of that moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Incredible. He was
Yeah.
funny beforehand, but the "my balls was hot" was the most iconic thing ever. And it was, my God,
Yeah.
you can't beat it. So we can't skip that fight, but it really was just, it was Volkov beating the shit out of
Yeah.
Lewis pretty much the whole time. St. Preux versus Reyes, we can kind of skip over that
Yeah.
decision.
Co-main was sick, though.
We don't like Dominic Reyes around here, by the way.
No. Screw your terrible hairline and almost beating John Jones. We hate Dominic Reyes and his
Hey,
horrible...
Dominic Reyes, if you're listening, you're a dumbass.
Hey, get some Rogaine. Anyways, let's stop shitting on Reyes.
Yeah. Sorry, Reyes. Not really.
Ferguson Pettis.
Wow. What a fight. It was a great fight. Anthony Pettis could have won. Tony Ferguson started to do good at the end of the second, but it kind of bummed me out. This is when I really realized that Anthony Pettis wasn't the fighter that he used to be, because he broke his hand and his coach goes, "Do you want to quit?" And Pettis goes, "I don't think I can go." Over a broken hand. How many fighters in every card break their hand and they continue anyway? So
Yeah.
I feel like at that point, Anthony Pettis, he was too comfortable in his life. He makes too much money. And that was kind of the downhill of Pettis at that point. It's just...
Both Pettises on the same card.
Well, no, Pettis did make up for it, like Sergio.
Yeah.
In Bellator.
Yeah.
Became a really good champion fighter there.
Can't
But
get over the
yeah, it was just kind of a bummer seeing that. Like, he had that quit in him where before he didn't. But we also seen that from a lot of fighters where they don't train as much when they become champion. They make all the money, and they're back to the contender status.
You're on a Wheaties box. Do you really want to fight with a
Yeah,
broken
it's
hand?
tough. But going into the main event, this is where it really counts at 155.
Dude.
Take it away.
Going into this with the trolley being thrown at the bus, and then the send me location, quoting that for like months going into it. The Artem Lobov slap. I mean, there could be like a 2-part documentary just made on the build up to this fight, and then going into it. I mean, so many of my friends were like, "Dude, like, we know you like Khabib. You're always talking about this guy. Like, he's fighting Conor, the only other name we know. So who do you think's gonna win?" And like, most people I talked to, with the exception of a couple, were like, Conor's going to smoke this guy. He's going to knock him out. It's Conor McGregor. And I told a couple people, I'm like, bet the house on Khabib. Like bet your life on it. Like bet all your money on it. And then the fight happens, and it's magical. The walkout with the smoke and, the 30 guards in the center of the ring holding them back. I mean, there's so much anticipation. And then we get into the fight, and I'm like sweating. I am so nervous. This is my second favorite fighter of all time. At the time, it was my favorite fighter because I'm like on the Khabib train, just riding it. And I was so happy. I'm like, okay, he's got the belt now. Now it's time to face Conor and show everybody how good he is. And yeah, he's just dominating. Arguably lost one round to Conor.
Yeah, he lost round 3. I was
yeah.
going, whoa.
First time he lost a round.
McGregor might be good.
Yeah, drops Conor with an overhand. Never saw that coming. But otherwise, it was just, again, one-way traffic, just pure dominance from Khabib. The way he threw that choke on just viciously, like not even looking for the choke. He's just like, I'm going to pop your head off of your shoulders right here. Very, very mean version of that choke. And then Conor taps, and then the explosion that happened after that, like Khabib getting in his face, like, talk now, and then Conor saying it's only business.
Him flying into Dylan
Literally
Dennis.
an eagle flying into Dylan Dennis, throwing punches at him, asking Dana, like, where's my belt? But Dana's, like, ushering out. It was crazy. And we're at the bar, like, freaking out. We're like, what is happening? That was a tremendous night. And then I was, like, begging the server. I'm like, please give me that poster. And I have the poster from that fight.
You have a
and
good collection.
I have, like, 5. I don't have a huge collection, but I have some of our favorite fights, so... That's probably my favorite poster. I love the Khabib Conor with the eyes. People even came over and they're like, did you draw the eyes yourself? Yeah. I'm like, no, that's how the poster came. But yeah, this for me, like going into it, just being a Khabib fan, being on that ride, like from the very beginning, it felt amazing, especially with all the bad blood. It felt so amazing to just watch him beat up Conor. Yeah. I get emotional just talking about it. But yeah, let's move on to the next one.
Next one. Also a McGregor card.
Yeah, except one where he's on the winning end.
Yeah.
So, in December 12th, 2015, we got blessed with UFC 194. And that one kicked off with McGee versus Alexander. We had Medeiros versus McDessie.
He's a Canadian. You better enunciate.
I'm sorry. I told you guys I was going to mess up names.
Sorry, Chief.
Mustavayev. See, I do some of the Russian ones, okay. Proctor, Lee versus Santos, Alves, Covington. We had Torres versus Jones, LeBarger. I don't remember that one, to be honest. Nope. Faber versus Sanez, and then we get into the main card. My God, Holloway versus Jeremy Stevens. Yeah. Maia versus Nelson, the battle of the jiu-jitsu. Then we had Romero Costa. Oh, jiu-jitsu versus wrestling. Weidman Rockhold. And, of course, Aldo versus McGregor. So I think mainly we're going to be talking about that main card. I mean, Covington and Lee were on the prelims, but, yeah, that main card is so well built.
I mean, this was Colby Covington's first loss. He gets submitted by Warley Alves in the first round. Nobody knew who Colby Covington was.
No, this is before he was talking trash, so we could almost just skip this.
Leonardo Santos getting the knockout over Kevin Lee.
That's big.
That was pretty big.
Yeah.
Because Leonardo Santos was kind of like, he was kind of fringe top 15. Every now and then he would be like kind of breaching the top 15 as like kind of a top contender at lightweight because he had all the skills.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like he couldn't like, he didn't have the computer to mix it all together properly to be in the top 10.
Yeah.
Because his jiu-jitsu, wow.
Yeah.
He could beat anybody. If you put him on the mats with any 155er, he was submitting them. So that was a pretty fun fight, especially with the knockout, especially with how we know what Kevin Lee's up to these days. I'm happy he's kind of knocked out from that fight. Anyway, Uriah Faber. Jeez. Fiber optic. Uriah Faber versus Frankie Saenz.
Yeah.
That was it was a boring fight, but everybody loves the California kid. It was just kind of domination by Uriah Faber. I think Saenz had a couple good moments.
I'm not a huge fan of butt chin myself, but
yeah. I like what he did for the sport.
That's true. Yeah, Team Alpha Male.
Max Holloway versus Jeremy Stevens. My lordy. Max Holloway, like, during that 11-fight win streak, was it 11 fights in a row before he fought for the title?
Yeah.
He just absolutely dominated everyone.
He's piecing everybody up.
And Jeremy Stevens, I've been a huge Jeremy Stevens fan for a long, long time.
Oh, heathen.
And he just put it to Jeremy Stevens. Bad. And I was actually really bummed out because I didn't know who this Holloway kid was. I was like,
I thought he was Mexican. I'm like, who is this Mexican beating up Stevens?
Yeah. And the sad thing was, I chose Holloway to win this fight, but I was like, come on, Jeremy, knock him out. Nothing. You can't even knock him down, first off, but whatever. We go up to the next fight. Damian Maia versus Gunnar Nelson.
Battle of Jiu-Jitsu.
This is what I call a veteran jiu-jitsu player versus a new age jiu-jitsu player match.
Mm-hmm.
Because Gunnar Nelson, he made waves in jiu-jitsu because he had a really good showing in ADCC. He ended up getting 4th place in the open weight division that he didn't even know he was going to be a part of. He was getting drunk. He didn't even have underwear on during his matches at open weight because he was hungover, didn't know he got his name pulled out, and he beat like 3 people in open weight. I forget the names of them, but you'd be surprised. They're massive in size and skill. Like, they're just insane. And Gunnar Nelson was able to submit 2 of them, go to a decision, and then lost his last match.
Mm-hmm.
So he almost podiumed with not even knowing that he was going to be doing open weight. He was actually drinking with John Kavanagh, McGregor's coach, when he found that out. And then there's Damian Maia from the day he was born. He was born in a freaking gi.
Yeah.
And he was able to just beat Gunnar Nelson. And people forget about how good Damian Maia was at that time.
Yeah, to those younger fans out there watching, I mean, he's probably the best jiu-jitsu competitor to ever compete. Like, I know Charles has the most submissions, but Damian Maia, like, when he was in his prime, he was winning with just jiu-jitsu. Like, not even wrestling, not even striking, just jiu-jitsu. And it was special because you were seeing, like, something that Hoist was doing, but in, like, a modern era. It was unbelievable to watch Maia in his prime. I really think newer fans should go back and watch his performances.
Oh my God. Especially if you guys want to get into the ground game, search up specific fights because he used it in the most effective way. And, yeah, Damian Maia just pretty much took his back. And what Gunnar Nelson should have done was do some striking, but he wanted to play grappling with him. And Damian Maia, wow.
It's the one guy you don't do it with. Yeah, like Ben Askren, like just mauled.
Exactly.
Mauled, yeah. So.
And then we move on.
Oh, my God, what a fight.
Jacare versus Yoel Romero.
What a fight.
I thought Jacare won. The only moment I thought Jacare lost was when Yoel Romero just suddenly pulls off a spinning back fist and floors Jacare to the mat. And by the way, Damian Maia has even beat Jacare in competition in jiu-jitsu. Anyway, Jacare, it's a very 50-50 match going into the first round. I thought Jacare was getting top position and landing more effective strikes. He obviously lost the second round because he got dropped. Going into the third round, that's what it was really based on, is who was going to have the better third round. In my opinion, I thought Jacare won. And I remember the commentators even going, really?
Yeah, it was
a very finicky fight.
Yeah. Yeah, hard to call, but I'd probably side with you. I'd have to rewatch it, but yeah. But I know that was razor tight.
I will say, with what Yoel did after this fight, man, am I ever happy that he won. Because Jacare wouldn't be doing, like, making those moments, those same moments that Yoel did.
Yeah.
So I think it's almost very important that Romero won this fight.
And then your boy, your king,
my sweet prince,
Luke Rockhold.
The performance of a lifetime.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people were saying online, there's something about, like, there's certain fighters that have this weird love around them. Everybody loves these fighters. Chris Weidman's one of them. Everybody loves Chris Weidman. I don't know why.
I don't know.
Every mom I know who knows anything about MMA goes, I love Chris Weidman.
Yeah.
Is it because he's a good dad? Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. But he's just like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. It's hard to hate him, but after that last fight he had, I hate him.
Anyway, so Chris Weidman, he kind of wins the first round, not by much, but I remember watching that first round and thinking, Luke Rockhold's got this, because one thing that we didn't really see in MMA, maybe in jiu-jitsu competitions you see, but Luke Rockhold was able to actually reverse his takedown and kind of get top position, and he was getting butterfly hooks as Chris Weidman was taking him down and flinging him over. And you're going, oh, I don't think Chris Weidman should be taking this to the ground. And second round, Rockhold gets more comfortable. He's getting a little bit more comfortable in the stand-up. And then Chris Weidman tries to take it down. You know, it's just kind of a 50-50 round. Third round, it's the most aggressive ground and pound for a minute and a half, where you go, stop the fight. Stop the fight. Luke Rockhold's on top of him, just pounding him. I think there was probably about 40, I think it was like 43 unanswered shots.
Yeah.
And Herb Dean's letting it go.
Yeah.
And it goes into the fourth round. You go, how is Chris Weidman even standing right now? Chris Weidman goes into the fourth round. He's exhausted from just getting beat up. And he throws a spinning wheel kick. The first time in his career, for no reason. And Luke Rockhold just goes, okay, grabs his back, whips him down to the ground, doesn't even do like a proper wrestling move. He just grabs him and goes, I'm going to get you. Takes him down, does the exact same thing what he did at the end of the third round, grounds and pounds him, and they finally stop the fight. And Luke Rockhold is the champion, and Anderson Silva was right. His luck was going to run out. Chris Weidman's luck ran out that night.
Yeah.
He was fighting old vets, made it all the way to Anderson Silva, won the belt.
Fluky.
Beats Silva again.
Fluky.
Beats Vitor and Lyoto. Barely beats Lyoto.
Yeah.
Which is kind of embarrassing. Vitor was off the TRT, so it doesn't even count.
Yeah, not even prime.
And Luke Rockhold, I remember him saying this before the fight. He's like, he's been beating a bunch of old Brazilians.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the first person that's going to beat him.
Yeah, I remember.
Because I'm not an old Brazilian, pretty much, like that. And that's exactly what he did. So that was one of my favorite moments.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not the biggest Luke fan, but all my homies hate Chris Weidman. So.
Hell yeah.
And then, getting into the proper 12. The proper 12.
We should put that in the video.
Proper 12?
My proper 12 video.
Oh, yeah, the Snapchat video of you. I'll see if I could stitch it.
It's on my Twitter. I can pull it up.
Number 12,
I think on the
2014, a legend was realised.
I'm the bitch.
In 13 seconds,
Sure
Conor
did.
McGregor
Definitely did.
dethroned the mighty Jose Aldo. But it was a fucking proper 12 seconds, ain't it? Proper 12.
Yeah, so do you want to talk about the build up to that with the changing
I'll tell you what. The one build-up piece
the way you
that
got in his head?
captured me the most was that commercial where Jose Aldo and Conor McGregor, they meet in the middle of the strip, yeah? And there's crowds of people behind both of them. And No Church of the Wild. It was No Church in the Wild.
Yeah, I think so.
That song's playing. It's the first time I've ever heard this song. And I go, wow. That song, the intensity of McGregor and Jose Aldo meeting in the middle of the street. It was the best UFC commercial I've ever seen.
One of the best
And
promoted cards ever.
I still think about it a couple times a year of just how entertaining that commercial was. And, you know, McGregor's already got the interim belt at this time, but I never really bought into the McGregor train. Out of the main card, that was the only fight pick that I got wrong. I chose Jose Aldo because I'm like, of course Jose's going to win.
Yeah, I barely swapped last minute, and even then I think I was on the fence, but leading up to it, I'm like, there's no way Jose Aldo loses. Like, he's the best fighter on the planet at the time. Like, the win streak, the leg kicks, the all-around game. I thought he was a better striker. Like, I'm like, it's Jose Aldo. But then we're just watching the build-up. We're watching him get into his head and get more into his head and more into his head. And then you see the face-off, and you're like, yo, he's got, like, the Arthur fist. Like, Jose Aldo's, like, he's ready to crank that right hand. And then, yeah, the way Conor just saw it, predicted it, stepped out of the way, most beautiful counter I think I've ever seen in maybe combat sports, period. And then just flatlines him. King of the world. The legacy is born. Most popular, greatest, arguably the greatest MMA fighter of all time, at least for popularity. Yeah. Absolutely spectacular. I mean, what a special moment. I mean, going into that, I had a lot of people ask, well, not a lot. I had a couple people. This is when my friends were first starting to get, like, casual about UFC. They're like, I heard about this fight. This isn't boxing. What is this? Who's Aldo McGregor? And I'm like, dude. And then I had a couple people watch that with me, and it was, yeah, amazing. Amazing. Moving on to number 6. This one I'll let you talk about.
Oh, God, we're only at number 6?
Sorry if this is a long video, but yeah. At number 6, let's try to speed it up. We can speed through this one a bit quicker because I actually don't remember it very well. I was about 9 years old when this card happened. I didn't want to mention any cards today that I didn't see. I did see this one, but before UFC 100, I didn't see any of those cards live, so I don't want to talk about them. We can, in the future, make a video of the top 10 cards before UFC 100, and we'll go back and watch them and rank them for you guys. But we wanted to talk about fights or cards today that we did see live. UFC 100, one of the first cards I ever saw live in my life. I was at a party, so I was kind of doing things outside at the same time. So I'll let Hunter talk a little bit more about this one and who was on the card.
So I actually rewatched this fight this fight card pretty recently. At least the prelims and everything, because I kind of know the main card pretty well. So, and also it was on YouTube for free because they're promoting UFC 300.
Yeah, that's right.
Tom Lawler versus CB Dollaway. That was oh my God, it has it wrong here. It says Tom Lawler versus CB Dollaway on the UFC. Jesus Christ, I can't talk right now. On the on the UFC website, it says CB Dollaway submitted Tom Lawler. That is not the case. Tom Lawler submitted CB Dollaway in 55 seconds, and CB Dollaway was a big name at the time because he came off of The Ultimate Fighter, same as Tom Lawler, but CB Dollaway was a big name during UFC 100. Those eras, like, if you were on The Ultimate Fighter, you were a huge name in the UFC.
Yeah.
And Tom Lawler put him to sleep. Like, sleep. Early, and everybody was astonished. And then Tom Lawler became did he become a wrestler?
Oh, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, Tom Lawler's a wrestler now. I know he's actually done local shows around here.
Yeah.
One of my favorite guys, because he's from Nova Scotia. I'm from Nova Scotia. TJ Grant was the third fight in the card. And he ended up losing a decision, but it was entertaining, and he was kind of learning the ropes and everything.
Yeah, you beat his ass in sparring, right?
Could you imagine? Oh, my God. This guy's 5'10", built like a brick shithouse, okay? He was 210 pounds when I trained with him. I'm like, how much do you weigh these days? And he's wearing a rash guard, and I can see the abs protruding through it. It's like, I'm about 210. I'm like, oh, my God. How'd you make 155? He's like, it was tough. I'm like, all right. And I wasn't a douchebag when I trained with him because it was years after he retired. Yeah. I never asked him, oh, so do you think you're going to another fight? Because I know he doesn't want to fight again.
Yeah.
So I was happy about that. Then John Jones versus Jake O'Brien. Woo-wee.
Banger.
John Jones. Jake O'Brien actually had a couple decent moments in the first round because this is very early in John Jones's career.
Yeah.
And then John Jones goes, nah, I'm going to get this guy. In the second round, because he's playing it very tentative. And then he just, I believe it was a guillotine he got in the second round. I could be wrong, though. Folks, let me know if I'm wrong.
Correct him.
Yeah, correct me. Call me a piece of shite. Dox me if I'm wrong. No, please don't.
Get us swatted.
SWAT our house. Jim Miller. this website's all messed up. It says Danzig wins. Jim Miller won at UFC 100. That was cool. Not really like a notable fight, to be honest. Mark Coleman, did he beat Stephan Bonner for sure? I'm starting to like second guess this.
This is UFC's website?
UFC 100. Yeah.
Get your shit together, UFC, man. What the heck?
Get your shit together. I'm coming for you.
Mark Coleman, shout out to him. Shout out to your recovery and saving your parents. Absolute hero.
Yeah. I know Sexyama was a big deal back in the day. It was Yoshiro Akiyama versus Alan Belcher. Alan Belcher was a really big name back then.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows who Alan Belcher is anymore. I wasn't the biggest fan of him either, but, he lost, apparently. I could be wrong. Who knows?
Yeah, somebody will correct us.
But then, Dan Henderson versus Michael Bisping.
There we go.
They just finished coaching on The Ultimate Fighter. Michael Bisping being the ultimate dickhead.
Yeah.
Super funny, but everybody hates Michael Bisping. He's making a fool out of himself. And whoever wins this fight gets to fight Anderson Silva. Michael Bisping's dream is to fight Anderson Silva. We know this years after because he has his own podcast and he just spews everything out now. But
literally,
yeah.
Anything you put on screen, you'll say.
Yeah. But anyway, Michael Bisping, he has a pretty good first round. And he knew throughout the whole camp, do not circle to your left. Don't circle to your left.
Yeah.
Well, what does he do? He circles to his left in the second round. And Dan Henderson has probably, up until that Jorge Masvidal and Askren, it might even surpass it. The most iconic knockout
Oh, it's up there. It's up
in
there,
UFC
yeah.
history.
I thought you were going to say one of the best overhands of all time, which he definitely has.
Yeah, it is. It's the most iconic. It's one of the most, if not the most iconic.
I'll put a picture up on screen.
Because it's one of the top-selling pay-per-views ever.
Yeah.
On one of the biggest cards ever. And he knocks out Michael Bisping, and he makes it his logo with the overhand right, and he finishes it off with one more elbow. And when they asked him, do you think that was necessary? He goes, well, if it shuts him up longer, yeah.
Super necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so awesome.
So he gets that.
Tim McGraw
gets it. Freaking UFC website is terrible. It says John Fitch versus Paulo Tiago's next.
UFC
it was the main event, technically.
Fire your website maker.
But yeah. Then George St. Pierre versus Thiago Alves is the co-main event. And George St. Pierre just does what George St. Pierre does. Jab.
Man, mon ami.
He jabs the shite out of you. And then he'll take you down whenever he wants.
Yeah.
After 5 rounds of getting just jabbed, you get 50-45. That's what happened. 50-45.
Shutout.
Yeah, absolute shutout.
6-0.
I'm going to look at the stats here.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Right here. Total strikes, 148-72. Takedowns, 10-0. Submission attempts, 1-0. Significant strikes, 60-30. And knockdowns, 1-0 in favor of GSP. It was just
doubled his striking and 10x'd the takedowns.
It's just an all-time beatdown.
Yeah.
That's what GSP did.
Yep.
It didn't matter who you were.
Dominance.
Technically the main event. Or no, not technically. I guess it was the main event. Frank Mir versus Brock Lesnar 2. This was Brock Lesnar's 4th fight in the UFC. His first fight was Frank Mir.
That's
he
nuts.
gets submitted by Frank Mir.
Yeah.
Second fight, beats Heath Herring in a decision. Good fight. Third fight, he knocks out Randy Couture, my true king, over Luke Rockhold, okay? Knocks him out in the second round. Randy's 46. It was his time to kind of move on from the belt anyway.
That's no excuse. Foreman defended at 47.
Shut up, dude. He was so much smaller than Brock.
Yeah.
And then Brock Lesnar versus Frank Mir. I think most fight fans, like true UFC fight fans, were choosing Frank Mir because obviously he's the much better, well-rounded fighter.
Yeah, one of the best submission artists ever at heavyweight.
Oh my god. But then Brock Lesnar, he just pushed the pace up against the cage.
Brock smash.
And he just beat him up. Up against the cage. He almost did the same thing as like Shane Carwin. Obviously, Shane Carwin did it in a more devastating fashion. But Brock Lesnar just went beast mode on his ass and defended the belt for the first time.
Man, if he had a full career in the UFC, he might have been the GOAT. Like, he's a problem. He could be a problem if he came over today and fought Aspinall. I know he's like in his 40s now, but there was something special about Brock when he came over because it was like we were getting like a shiny new toy. It was like a different specimen. It was so unique. And yeah, he just, like, if you look at who he fought in the little amount of fights he had, one of the most impressive resumes ever.
And his Bud Light speech afterwards.
Yeah.
Wow.
I love Brock.
He was funny.
Good Canadian boy.
Yeah. He's living in Saskatchewan these days. He just has a farm.
Yeah.
He's like, I make beef jerky with my neighbor.
Yeah. Should go out there and interview.
Yeah. Let's do it.
So yeah, getting into our top 5 finally. It's going to be a long video, but hopefully people like it. At 5, I have 205. I mean, we have 205. A lot of people probably think this should be number 1, which is fair enough. This was November 12th, 2016. And let's run through this card because this card is like super stacked. So,
number 1 belt: Liz Carmouche versus Caitlin Chukagian.
Okay.
Jim Miller versus Thiago Alves. My bad. I think that's Alves' debut at 155.
Yeah, Santos versus Miller.
Vicente Luque versus Bilal Muhammad. Rafael Natal versus Tim Boetsch. Habib Nurmagomedov versus Michael Johnson. Frankie Edgar versus Jeremy Stevens. Going into the main card now, Misha Tate versus Raquel Pennington, which is now the 135 champ somehow.
Yeah.
Anyway, Chris Weidman versus Yoel Romero. Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Karolina Kowalkiewicz.
I love that
I
fight.
think.
Yeah.
I probably enunciated
Battle
that
of the
wrong.
Poles.
Tyron Woodley versus Stephen Thompson. And Eddie Alvarez versus Conor, the Notorious McGregor.
Yeah, so, I mean, besides like the Nadal Bosch one, I think every single fight on this card played a huge factor in the rest of their careers.
Yeah.
So with the exception of one fight, every single fighter, not just one fighter in the matchup, every single fighter on this card had a fight that like meant something huge to their careers. So we'll quickly go through the prelims. Carmouche, Chukagian. All right, that's just kind
Carmouche was able to get a title shot later on.
Yeah, and then Miller, Alves.
Not much there either. It was just more of Thiago Alves does not look good at 155. He was cutting too much weight, and Jim Miller just beat him up on the ground.
Luque knocking out Bilal.
And you know what? Nobody knew who Bilal Muhammad was.
Nobody does now.
Nobody knew who Vicente Luque was then either. And Luque just knocking him out. Just reminiscing on that moment. It's nice. It is nice.
It's fun to hate on Bilal. I actually like Bilal. He's a nice guy.
He's actually not a bad dude. He seems like a nice guy.
Yeah.
I hope he gets a title shot, but every time he's like, I'm going to fight for the title, I'm like, I hope you don't because it's funny. It's like, it's more of a meme than anything.
Yeah.
The guy deserves the fight for the belt, but it's so funny just like pushing him off the belt. It's like, actually, you don't deserve it. You've only beat every prospect.
Yeah, Nadal, Bosch, skip that.
Yeah.
And then Habib just talking to Michael Johnson the whole fight. Like, brother, you have to give up. I need title shot. And he just piecing him up on the ground. It's not even remotely close. And then finally Habib's like, okay, I'll show some mercy and grab your arm for a second. That was an awesome performance.
That was the ultimate chicken wing.
Yeah.
He's like, say uncle. John's like, no. Okay.
Watching that fight live was like, that made me a huge Habib fan. Like, I was already a big fan, but that was like, I love this guy because watching that, I was like, he's talking to him during the fight, telling him, like, I need a title fight. Like, I thought that was so badass.
I thought Habib was going to tear his shoulder off.
yeah,
it was so vicious.
It was a mean one, for sure. And then, yeah, Edgar Stevens.
Frankie did what Frankie does.
Yeah,
Box him up a little bit, take him down.
love Frankie.
It was just, if you're faster than Stevens, you're going to win.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Love Frankie. And then Tate Pennington. Looks better now that Pennington has become champ.
That was a bummer of a fight.
Yeah.
Misha Tate was like, well, if I can't win this fight, I'm probably not going to win my belt back. And she retired for like 4 years and had a couple of kids. And she became a good mom. And I guess just a couple of years ago, she started fighting again. But
She's looking for a fight right now, I think. So, yeah. Yoel Romero Weidman.
Love that fight. Anything that has to do with Chris Weidman getting knocked out,
Yeah.
just beaten in any
Yep.
fashion. Oh, it brings me the biggest smile. He's a nice guy. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the nicest guys in UFC. But you don't beat Anderson Silva, and you can't expect me not to hate you.
Yeah, especially how you beat him. And then his last fight with the eye pokes and then
Oh.
being like, you can't go to the ground when I poke you 3 times in the eye.
Oh.
Shut up. Shut up and retire, you freaking bum.
Dominic Reyes and Chris Weidman are those are the two fighters we hate, I guess.
I guess so, yeah.
Weidman really cemented it recently.
We hate American athletes.
Except for John Jones.
Yeah.
But Yoel Romero,
Yeah.
he was losing the first round. Second round, he was almost like still losing that.
Yeah.
And he just decides, I'm going to go sicko mode. Throws the flying knee in the clinch range. I don't know how he landed it to this day.
There's a couple
He just
flying knees,
he read that moment of Chris Weidman of I'm going to drop down. And the way it's hard for me to understand how Yoel Romero from that tighter range was able to land that knee flush on his chin.
Oh, it's the calisthenics.
Oh, it was incredible.
I don't think some people might not know this, but he built that body, and he was like almost 40 at the time of this fight. He's like 45 now and still fighting.
Yeah.
He built that body with calisthenics only. He didn't use any weights. And if you watch some of the Cuban training footage and like the explosive movements they do, there's a reason why. If you watch Cuban freestyle wrestling, it's the most explosive. It's not the most technical like the Russian style. But it's the most explosive. You see like the workouts they do, and yeah, it didn't surprise me as much because like I follow the wrestling. But yeah, it's nuts. Like some of the knees he landed in his career, you're like, how did you elevate that high that quickly and with that much mass?
I just never seen it like from that close.
Yeah. It's wild. He's a special athlete.
In one of the ultimate post-fight speeches. Michael Bisping!
I love you!
I love you! See you soon! Bye! It's so funny.
Yes.
And then you have Michael Bisping throwing the bird back to him from the stands.
As iconic.
And let's be honest, Bisping was never supposed to be champ. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not Conan.
No, Battle of the
Feature.
Poles. Battle of the Poles was pretty sick. I'm a big fan of both fighters. I love Joanna and Carolina. I think Carolina's like the sweetest girl to ever fight. I can't believe she had some wars too. I can't believe
I want her to be my mom.
Yeah, or an aunt or something. She's so
Just
sweet.
kidding, Mom.
Anyways, Battle of the Poles, boxing, kickboxing. Joanna's just a better kickboxer. So.
Yeah. There was one good moment in the fourth round. Carolina landed a spinning back fist that rocked Joanna. That was pretty much the only moment that she took over.
I might be misremembering, but I think they fought in kickboxing too, or Muay Thai.
I think it was amateur MMA. They fought a couple of times. Shevchenko, she fought in kickboxing twice and lost.
Yeah.
But
Woodley and Wonderboy.
Fight of the year, actually. That year. Tyron Woodley, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. It was it was either the most boring 3 minutes or the most exhilarating 2 minutes. In every round, it was edge of your seat after what happened in the first round. Wonderboy took over. Second round, Tyron Woodley floors him with an overhand. You go, holy crap.
Mm-hmm.
Third round is kind of boring again. Third round, or is it fourth round that Tyron Woodley gets him in the guillotine? He drops him with an overhand, gets him in the guillotine. It looks like it's over for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. All of a sudden, his head pops out in like the last 15 seconds of the round, and he throws a couple strikes, and you go, oh my God, did he steal the round? Even though there's no way he stole the round. It was more of like, did he get a 10-9, or was that a 10-8 round for Tyron? It was on that bridge. And it was just the ultimate back and forth of, it was either Stephen Wonderboy Thompson controlling the round, or it was Tyron Woodley making the most dramatic moments happen when he needed them to happen, and holding on to it. And it became one of the best fights of the year to a draw. And the thing is, you can say, oh, there's more entertaining fights at that time, like in that year. The thing is, when there's that highest stakes in a matchup, that adds on to
and the
what a fight
styles.
of the year.
I was just gonna say the style matchup for this was very interesting because you had a wrestler with an overhand, and not just an overhand, but like a really good straight. Like,
Oh my
if you want to talk about wrestlers with overhands, Tyron Woodley's at the peak of that. He's like the perfect build for that. Then you had a more darty kind of style, which was, the matchup was just so interesting that it does make for, I don't know if I'd put it fight of the year looking back, but that stylistic matchup was very, very interesting at the time. And going into that, I had no idea how it was going to play out.
Yeah. Now, the main event.
Yeah.
That's one of the best performances I have ever seen in the UFC or any combat sports, period.
Clean. The combo he hit him with was one of the cleanest combos I've ever seen in MMA, especially the angles he was hitting him at. It reminded me of Lomachenko, just the way he was shifting his body. Ilya kind of reminds me of that now, but that was a perfect combination. You can watch that back in slow motion. It's art. You can put that on a wall. It's absolutely beautiful. And then it's the first time we ever saw two belts on the shoulder of one person in the octagon.
Yeah. I would like to take this moment to apologize to absolutely nobody.
Yeah.
The double champ does what the fuck he wants.
Yeah. Iconic. Nobody else did that. The first one, so that's very special.
There's only two other champions at that time that have won belts in two different divisions.
Yeah, but it wasn't simultaneous.
BJ Penn, Randy Couture.
Yep.
Like you said, not simultaneous, but
that was special. Wow. That shot of him just getting on the cage with the two belts, like that's one of those images that's just burnt into my mind. Like the ice shorts and the flame shorts with Chuck versus Tito. There's just some images that are burnt into my mind, and that's one of them. So yeah, that was a special one.
I'd tell you what, one moment, guys, look into Randy Couture. His career was great. But one of my favorite moments is when Randy Couture was ground and pounding Tito. Tito's like going for a leg or whatever, and Randy goes spanking his bum.
Yeah.
In the fifth round,
That was
I think
awesome.
it was.
That was awesome.
Hilarious. The whole crowd loses it laughing.
Yeah.
And Randy wasn't like trash talk or anything.
No.
But that was just great.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Shout out to Randy.
I digress.
Number 4. We got to get moving. UFC 199, June 4th, 2016. 2016, like we said, a big year that people look back on. This one started out with Reyes versus Kim, Casey versus Muntapik, Henrique da Silva versus Wilson, Strickland versus Breeze.
This fight, Strickland versus Breeze, I was high on Tom Breeze. This was actually one of the fights that made me become a Sean Strickland fan. 1 second.
Yeah, the way the shirt is, it looks really funny. There we go. Get that in the shot. That beautiful shirt.
Anyway.
Miller, Caceres, Peña, Andrade, Dariush versus Vic. Oh, I love hating Michael Vick, too. That's another one I like hating.
James Vick.
Oh, yeah. No, I love Michael Vick. I'm sorry. I hate James Vick. I'm glad Justin Gaethje knocked him unconscious. I love Michael Vick. He's probably my favorite footballer of all time. Anyways, Dariush, Vick, Ortega, Guida. Poirier versus Bobby Green. Bobby Green!
No, you don't understand.
No! I need the bonus.
I talk like a 13-year-old girl.
I don't know why he talks like an emo child, but Henderson versus Lombard, Holloway versus Lamas. That's where that, iconic point to the ground happened. And then Cruz Faber, iconic matchup. And then Rockhold Bisping. Yeah.
Allow me here.
Yes, this is almost all you. This is your card.
Early prelims. I'm an early prelims fella.
As you said.
As I've said. Sean Strickland beats Tom Breeze. I'm huge on Tom Breeze at this moment because I'm thinking he's going to be like a top contender at welterweight. And I see Sean Strickland beat him. I go, wow. Like, this guy is really good. I was not expecting this from Sean Strickland. And mind you, at this time, Sean Strickland didn't say a word in the media. He was just quiet. He was just a guy on the prelims. He was more of like that pick where you go, hopefully this guy does something good. Because I knew Tom Breeze was a really good fighter. That just gave me more confidence in Sean Strickland. I'm like, this is a fun fighter. I like him. I'm going to follow him. Now I'm wearing his stupid shirt. It's actually not stupid. It's sick as hell.
Stupid.
But hey. Alex Caceres versus Cole Miller. People knew Cole Miller from The Ultimate Fighter, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Caceres was kind of a fun fighter coming in. That was pretty much it. Jessica Andrade.
One of the first
TKOing Jessica Pena. If you see a woman knocking out anybody in the UFC, it's a big deal. It really is.
Mm-hmm.
People started going on the bandwagon of Jessica Andrade.
Pocket Nunez.
She just lost, I think her fight previous to this, she lost to Joanna Jędrzejczyk. But she's been a fan favorite ever since because she lands devastating knockouts in the women's strawweight division.
Or the slam.
Whew.
That was sick.
So, anyway, go forward. Beneil Dariush versus James Vick. I don't really remember this one, to be honest. I guess Beneil knocked him out. James Vick.
Yeah!
But yeah, I never really paid attention to that fight. Brian Ortega versus Clay Guida. Now this one I cared about because I like Clay Guida. I like the old fighters.
Mm-hmm.
One of my dad's favorite fighters was Clay Guida. And Clay Guida was beating him up for round 1, round 2, and most of round 3. He was just putting the pace on Brian Ortega. Brian Ortega really didn't have a big name. He was known as T-City back then. Got a couple decisions. He, a couple good fights, but he wasn't mainstream at all in the slightest. And then Clay Guida, he's beating him up this whole fight. And what was it? A couple minutes into I think it was like 2.5 minutes in the third round. Boom! Hits him with a knee. Because Clay Guida has a tendency of like shucking down a little bit and then throwing hooks. And he timed it perfectly. Knocked him out with a knee. And then just landed a couple shots of ground a pound. And you go, holy crap. This guy is the real deal. Like Brian Ortega knows how to fight.
Yeah.
He knows how to time strikes.
Yeah.
And that's when I think after that he started fighting in the top 15. But
yeah.
Man, oh man, that was amazing.
Main card.
Dustin Poirier versus Bobby Green. Man, had no idea who Bobby Green was. I knew a little bit of Dustin Poirier at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Not much, though. Because if you're an old school follower like me, and Braden even, a lot of guys didn't really follow the lighter weight divisions. Like anything under 155 was kind of passed up on a lot of the time. And Dustin Poirier comes into this fight. I think it's his first fight at 155 in the UFC. Because he lost that fight to Conor McGregor. I think it might be his second fight
Yeah.
at 155.
Somebody
after he
will
lost.
correct us.
Yeah, something like that. But it was his first fight that could actually like boost him into the top 15, possibly at 155. And Bobby Green's looking pretty good. He's dodging all the punches. He's freaking egging him on and everything. But the one thing Poirier did that Bobby Green's not really used to is that Poirier just continued his combination, even if he was missing punches. And he was able to land that left hand on his temple, drop him, couple ground and pound, put him out. After that, I became a Dustin Poirier fan. That was the fight that actually made me a Poirier fan. Never watched any of his fights previous to that. Dan Henderson versus Hector Lombard.
People forget.
You must remember this one.
People
You take it
forget
away.
about. No, you talk about Dan. You like Tim McGraw.
Oh
But
my
people
God.
forget about Hector Lombard. You guys,
Oh,
this guy was an amazing fighter at the time.
oh
One of the
heck.
best Cuban fighters ever.
Now let me tell you something about Hector Lombard. This motherfucker, he was a big deal on the Bellator.
Jesus. Turn into Don Fry.
Now let me tell you something. Now let me tell you something about the Hector Lombard. This fella, he was a judo guy.
We gotta get going, man. We still got 3 more cards to cover. Like,
Anyway, Hector Lombard, he was a big deal in Bellator. And he was a power puncher.
oh my lord.
Anyway, he was a really good fighter in Bellator. Big name, multi-time champion, yada, yada, yada. Had some slips in the UFC, came up to the middleweight from welterweight. You know, he wasn't the biggest name, but at least he was still a name. Dan Henderson, I'm not even sure if he's ranked at this fight. And Dan Henderson does what Dan Henderson does best. Even in his mid-40s, with no TRT, knocks him out with an he hits him with a head kick, I believe. Hector's a little bit wobbled, and he lands an elbow on him. And Hector goes down, he lands an overhand, and I remember it was an elbow because he went on interviews afterwards, and his neighbors had a big poster for him. It was like instead of the H-bomb, they called it the Hellbow. And yeah, they put a big banner for him, and he wins this fight, and it led him into a title fight with Michael Bisping, which we'll get to later. Now, feature fight.
Holloway Lamas. Absolute banger. You guys probably know it from these memes going around where Holloway points to the ground. That happened in the Gaethje fight, as you guys probably know. This was, I think, the first time he did it, where he pointed to the ground, and Lamas actually, you know, he stood there with him. Yeah, he obliged him, and it's just a crazy ending to the fight. I don't remember the rest of the fight very well. I know it was a very good fight, and it was just one of those performances where I'm like, man, Max Holloway, he's young. And I always some people get on me about this, but I always look at the age, because the age matters. It really shows you like how long of a career can they have, and can they become the GOAT. And at the time, I'm like, this kid's like in his mid-20s. Like, this guy has a really good shot at becoming like a GOAT in the sport. So this is one of those fights that put Holloway on my map. Now, Cruz versus Faber, amazing matchup. I love that matchup.
Absolute domination by Cruz.
Boxing versus wrestling, and just his style of boxing too, that Willie Pep style, that darting in and out and dropping your head. Of course, Cody figured it out, but up until this point, nobody had figured that out.
And Dominic Cruz, everybody makes fun of him for having pillow hands, much like Michael Bisping in the main event, right?
Yep.
Dominic Cruz drops Uriah Faber. And remember, at this time, Uriah Faber is a huge fan favorite.
Yeah. Probably, yeah. As big of a name at least, if not bigger.
I think he was bigger than Dominic Cruz at that time because Dominic Cruz had just won the belt on Fox TV against TJ Dillashaw after being out for 3 years. He had one fight against, I forget his name, but he was a Japanese fighter.
Mm-hmm.
He gets a first-round TKO against him. Has that close fight against TJ Dillashaw. And he's just kind of like making his name valuable again at this point. And Uriah Faber was the perfect opponent because he just beat Frankie Sains, actually, because we were talking about that fight earlier.
Mm-hmm.
That's what got him the title fight somehow. And yeah, it just showed how good Dominic Cruz was and that he was back and he was ready to be champion again.
Yeah, eventually I might make like a full video. We'll see, because I can't use a lot of footage, unfortunately, from UFC. My video will just get copyright stricken. But I do want to break down Dominic Cruz's style, because a lot of these younger fans haven't seen him fight, or at least haven't seen him fight live. And it is a very interesting style. Unless you're like super into boxing and the intricacies of it, you're not going to really understand why that style works. So in the future, I might make a video on why Dominic Cruz succeeded and why, if he didn't get injured so much, he could have had like a run at being one of the GOATs. So
Yeah.
getting into that main event, though, that's all you.
Wow.
You're king.
As much as I am the biggest Luke Rockhold fan,
You're king?
my king, my other king at the time was Michael Bisping. Okay? Because Michael Bisping, he's just been... Do you mind if I swear?
Well, what word is it?
The S word. It's the S word.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. We'll get by.
He's been at the shit end of the stick for so many fights. And mind you, at this time, we don't know that he's blind in one eye.
Yeah, no
But
idea.
we know he's had the worst run. He's had so many fights, and then he's one fight away from fighting for the title. He doesn't make it. He's one fight away from making the title again. He loses. And he gets called short notice. 2 weeks out. He's on a movie set doing a Vin Diesel XXX movie. And
sucks.
he's drinking beers, he's having a good time. And Dana White announces he's fighting for the middleweight belt against Luke Rockhold because Chris Weidman had to pull out. Before Bisping even accepted the fight. But Dana White, because he's known Bisping for so many years off of the Ultimate Fighter Season 3, he had full confidence that Bisping would take it no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So Bisping took the fight, of course. And with 2 weeks of training with Perillo, just going over the left hand. And mind you, this is the second time they fought. Rockhold beat the snot out of him the first time. And Bisping goes out there, known as having pillow hands. Knocks him out in the first round.
Left hook Larry.
Left hook Larry lands. One of the most magical moments in UFC history, in my opinion, because
huge upset.
of how long he was in the UFC, how long he's been snubbed, fighting all these people on steroids, and he's always clean. And he gets it done. He wins the belt. Wow.
Yeah, what an underdog. What an everyman.
One other thing. They used to do the shared post-fight press conferences.
Oh, yes.
That was the last time they did that.
Go and watch it. You'll know why.
Luke Rockhold and Bisping did verbal sparring for the 15 minutes.
It was more brutal than the fight.
Oh, my God. Bisping... He TKO'd him 3 more times. It was nonstop. Also, the build-up to that fight was so hilarious.
Yeah.
When Rookhold's like talking about like
believe,
conceive,
achieve.
yeah, and then Bisping's like conceive, believe, achieve. Shut the f up. And Dana White's howling, laughing.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's one of my favorite fight cards, just because of that moment.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Top 3. So number 3, I think, is definitely number 3. Number 1 and 2 are the ones where like I could swap them any given day, but we'll get into that because I think people might be surprised what number 1 is. But number 3, we have UFC 189, which happened July 11th, 2015. And on this card, we had Kendeno versus Pfister. No idea.
Pfister.
Siri versus Smolka. I know Smolka, but yeah. And then we had Garbrandt versus Brinozzi. Pendred versus Howard. I'm butchering these names so good. Swick versus Garcia.
This was a big deal because Mike Swick was on one of the earlier seasons of The Ultimate Fighter, and I believe this was his retirement fight.
Brown versus Means, that was a good one. Pickett
one.
versus Almeida. Nelson versus Thatch. Bermudez versus Stevens. And then you might be saying, like, how is this 3? How did you get, like, I thought the previous ones were a little bit stronger. The main two fights were insane. So you had Robbie Lawler versus Rory McDonald 2. Maybe the greatest fight of all time. Some people are saying it's Max versus Justin now, but to me, that's still number 1, and we'll talk about that in a second. And then you also had Mendez versus McGregor. So while the rest of the card, a little bit weaker, the top end is so heavy, and you have maybe the greatest fight of all time, so that's why it's so high. But which ones do you want to highlight?
Honestly, the ones I would like to highlight is, I wouldn't even talk on Cody Garbrandt. He was kind of nobody at that time. Alex Garcia beating up Mike Swick was kind of a big deal because it was a retirement fight. Everybody liked Mike Swick.
Yeah.
Mike Quick Swick. Actually, sorry, he had one more fight after this, and he won in the early rounds. I forgot about that.
Maybe like 2 people have heard of Swick, so.
Yeah, which is unfortunate
Yeah.
because if you watch him, you'd fall in love with his personality in The Ultimate Fighter, and he seems like a really good dude. Matt Brown versus Tim Means. I like the Dirty Bird, don't get me wrong, but Matt Brown winning by submission.
Immortal.
That's rare. That's rare for Matt Brown to get a submission. You got to watch that. I don't personally remember it, but a Matt Brown fight is always going to be good. So you got to watch it. Thomas Almeida versus Brad Pickett. I like Brad Pickett, but this made me a Thomas Almeida fan. He beat the snot out of him, and he goes, you know what would make this better? If I threw a flying knee and knocked out Brad Pickett. He throws a double flying knee, which is like instead of landing with your rear, you fake with the rear, and you come in with the lead knee. He drops him bad, 1 or 2 more strikes, knocks him out. That was the coming out party for Thomas Almeida. He's undefeated at the time. He's on a collision course to fight Cody Garbrandt in the future, which, I hate that he lost that fight, but whatever. Gunnar Nelson versus Brandon Thatch. We find out that Gunnar Nelson has really good jiu-jitsu. Submits Brandon Thatch, and Thatch is a good jiu-jitsu guy in the UFC at that time.
Mm-hmm.
He's also, I believe he's from The Ultimate Fighter. It's kind of at that time where people like kind of watch The Ultimate Fighter, kind of not.
Yeah.
So
That's why I started tuning out a bit.
yeah. Dennis Bermudez versus Jeremy Stevens. Let me get into this.
Yeah, just don't take too long.
Dennis Bermudez. He was one of my favorite fighters at the time. Okay. He's fighting a pretty good fight against Jeremy Stevens, and he backs Jeremy Stevens up against the fence in the 3rd round. And Jeremy Stevens goes, we going up. Flying knee. Bop! Drops him. Bang! Bang! I'm like, oh shit! Stevens is back! Because guess what? Jeremy Stevens, also one of my favorite fighters. So it was a win-win. So.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Why don't you take over this one?
Sure. I mean,
I've talked enough.
I think a lot of people know this story. Rory versus Robbie 2. There's some build-up. I mean, you see them on talk shows and stuff. Both don't really have personalities. Both are really chill, calm guys. Leading up to this fight, you're like, there's no way these guys are going to get into a bloody war.
By the way, that's the personality of the regular psycho killer. You know what I mean? Well,
hit or
Jack the
miss.
Ripper. Nobody knows who that
Well,
was.
he lived in 1888. How are we supposed to know?
Exactly. These people can get away with that because they're so
Anyways,
quiet.
They're stone cold killers. Going to this fight, they seem like 2 really, really nice guys. Plus, you have a Canadian. You're not really expecting a bloody war, but it turned into a bloody war. Now, the first round, a tad bit slower. Like, it doesn't just kick off right away.
Boring.
Yeah, maybe boring. But as the fight picks up, it just gains momentum and gains momentum and gains momentum. And I think it's the end of the 3rd round when they stare each other down.
End of yeah, I think you're right.
And that's
it's either 3rd or 4th.
Yeah. I might throw an image up. It is a bloody image, so I don't want to get taken down off YouTube. But what an image. I mean, you guys probably know it. If not, go search it up. If you haven't seen the fight, if there's one fight we mentioned today that you need to watch if you haven't seen it, it's this one. It's arguably the greatest fight of all time. Just the spirit and the warrior mentality that just clashed together in that octagon. Neither of them were going to concede any ground. They were just going to stand there and sling it out. Like, imagine the last 10 seconds of that Holloway-Gaethje fight being like several rounds. That's what this fight felt like. It was just an absolute clobber knuckle, if that's a word.
Slobber knocker.
Slobber knocker. Dude, the way they were throwing hands at each other and just guards down, like eating everything. And neither one of them wanted to quit, but eventually the nose was getting a little bit too much. I don't think Rory could breathe.
The story of the fight was Robbie Lawler broke Rory's nose in the first round. Rory was able to withstand it up until that fifth round where it was completely shattered.
Yeah.
And from that moment forth, Robbie Lawler beat him so bad.
Yeah.
Rory never fought the same.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because at the time he was a little bit younger, and like this was a guy, like obviously being Canadians, we really wanted him to go on a run and be like the next GSP.
He was
but
he was GSP's protege.
yeah.
But Robbie Lawler, it just grew to the lore of who Robbie was.
Yeah.
Robbie still to this day is the he has the most losses to become a UFC champ. He went through so many ups and downs in his career.
Mm-hmm.
For him to defend that belt in such a hard-fought battle.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I get chills watching it now, and I've seen the fight like 50 times. There's a mystique and a lore and something about that fight that's why 189 is so high on our list today. But there's also one more fight that we have to talk about that is pretty special, and that's Conor McGregor beating Chad Mendes, a fight that a lot of people, they were kind of siding with Chad. They were like, okay, Conor's going to face a wrestler now. This is a really good wrestler who also has some power. And leading into that fight, Conor got into his head a little bit.
It was a stupid fight. He was supposed to fight Jose Aldo on this card. Okay.
Yeah.
And just to let you guys know, this was the first UFC card that they had live music at. And it's the only UFC card that they had live music at to this date yet. Because of Conor McGregor and how big he is. McGregor had Sinead O'Connor.
R.I.P.
R.I.P. My queen.
Yes.
And she performed in the Foggy Dew.
Yep.
And I forget who Chad Mendes had perform.
Who cares?
Yeah. But if Jose Aldo didn't pull out 2 weeks prior to that fight, Rihanna was going to perform for him.
Wow. That would have been
Rihanna
cool.
Was booked to perform for UFC 189. Just to let you guys know.
Famous Brazilian Rihanna.
But anyway, so Chad Mendes took this fight on 2 weeks' notice. But everybody thought Chad Mendes was going to win because this was pretty much the only wrestler that Conor McGregor had faced in the UFC.
Real wrestler, yeah.
Real wrestler.
Yeah.
So, first round, it's kind of going Chad Mendes' way. But the one thing is, McGregor's bridging out from the bottom and landing elbows and kind of cutting him up. So, he lost the first round, but he also made like a big show of it from being on bottoms. Like, I can still kick your ass from the bottom. Second round, it's just front kick right to the sternum, knocking the wind out of him, nonstop, beating him up. And then just he lands that death blow of the left hand where Chad Mendes goes, I can't do it anymore. Drops to the ground. McGregor finishes it. He gets the interim belt. And that's where it continues on from that lore of building up to that Jose Aldo fight. It's almost better that Jose Aldo didn't make it to that fight because it just made McGregor that much bigger.
Mm-hmm. No, it made the fight bigger for sure. Yeah,
my
it definitely made
God.
the Aldo fight bigger. Yeah, that was spectacular. Getting into our top two. At number 2, Like I said, we could have swapped these around. Number 1 is number 1 for a little bit of a special reason, which we'll get to. But at number 2 today, we're going to put UFC 300. Now, this was an amazing card. I just covered this card in detail on my channel, so we'll go through this one probably the quickest, just because I've already covered it, and we could talk about every single fight on this card. It really was the best built card I think we've ever had. It was absolutely spectacular. So let's quickly run through it, since I already covered this a couple weeks ago.
Can I go through my motions for every fight here?
Like
Figueiredo
in
versus...
what detail?
Very quick.
Okay.
Figueiredo versus Garbrandt. Hell yeah. Fig you won.
Yeah.
Bobby Green versus Jim Miller. Boo!
That sucked, dude. Why'd you do that?
What the hell?
Why'd you beat up Jim Miller?
Jessica Andrade versus Rodriguez. Meh. Jalen Turner versus Renato Moicano. Yeah!
How did that happen?
Yeah. I need the money. Money Moicano. Freaking Moicano train. Join it today.
Yep. And
Buy
then,
tickets as soon as you can.
speaking of joining trains, Lopez versus Yusuf.
Diego Lopez.
By
Diego
knockout?
Lopez. By knockout?
By
What?
knockout.
By knockout? What? He's a submission artist. What the heck?
Holm versus Harrison. That's what we thought.
Kayla Harrison?
That's what we thought.
Hell yeah, brother.
Easy champ. Easy champ. Raquel, pack your bags.
Okay. Aljamain Sterling versus Calvin Kattar.
Impressive.
Wow.
Impressive.
Okay. Aljamain Sterling said it was the most dominant performance on the UFC 300 card. People shout on him.
Maybe.
I agree.
Maybe.
For 15 minutes straight, didn't even get hurt once. I kind of agree, but at the same time, Pereira. Yuri versus Rakic.
No!
Oh,
We were so close to getting that one right.
Our picks were so bad. Anyway,
Best striker in the division gets knocked out. Yeah, we were.
Rakic, I still feel like he can be the champion and be the best in the world at 205.
Yeah.
Behind, it's either he's equal to or better than Magomed Ankalaev.
Ankalaev.
Yeah,
We'll see.
sorry.
We'll see. I don't know how good he is either.
So Yuri Prohaska winning in that fashion in the second round, good for him. But man, I feel so bad for Rakic. Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage. No shit.
Duh. Went a little bit longer than we called, but
Yeah.
not much adversity. He faced some adversity, not much. Yeah. Wash fight. Anyways.
Armin
Oliveira.
Sarukian versus Oliveira.
Most exciting fight. Most back and forth.
The fact that this is a split decision is a disservice to Sarukian.
That is true.
I'm a huge Oliveira fan. Braden knows this
Yeah.
for many, many years. I'm very objective when it comes to fights. I don't really take sides. If I think somebody really won, even if they're one of my favorite fighters that they're fighting,
Gotta be.
Sarukian was unbelievable. What a fight. What a game plan. And for him to defend those deep, deep submissions like Volkanovski did
Yeah.
against Ortega.
Shows grit.
And people that said, oh, yeah, he was out in the third round in the last 15 seconds. That's a proper defense over the Darce.
Yeah.
You got to defend and get low to the ground so you relieve pressure. So
Flexibility. That was crazy.
that axe kick.
Was not expecting that.
What?
Yeah. Full on splits. Like full 180 in the air. Crazy.
That gave me the same feeling when I seen Shevchenko pull that
Yeah.
against Holly Holm. I
Yeah.
was like, what?
Yeah, and he has things in between his legs. Yeah, very impressive. I love Armin.
Things between his legs. Jesus.
Armar, as I was calling him in the predictions. Armin. I love Armin. He's one of my favorite fighters.
And we got to see him live, thankfully.
Yeah. Gaethje Holloway. Fight of the year. Best fight of all time, maybe. Greatest moment of all time. It's up there with Ben Askren for
I
me.
can't say it's the best fight of all time because there wasn't that much.
Back and forth.
Yeah, it was mostly just like Holloway beating him up.
Yeah.
He kind of got dropped in the fourth round a little bit. But they
Yeah,
didn't even
didn't-
count
yeah.
it. I thought it was a draw. I thought it was a knockdown. They didn't. The UFC didn't count it as a knockdown.
Yeah.
Max Holloway. Thank God we chose him to win. That's like one of our fights that we predicted right.
Yeah.
Max Holloway wins in the most incredible fashion ever.
You're winning the fight. You're pitching a shutout. You're boxing the guy up. Everybody thought that he was, well, not everybody, but a lot of people thought he was going to beat you because he has the power and he's a natural 155. You get to the end of the fight. You're basically won. 15 seconds left. You're Max Holloway. You're just so freaking gangster that you point at the mat. And of course, you have a guy across from you. He's definitely going to oblige. It's Justin Gaethje. He's the violence, right? So they throw down, absolutely crazy, just like the Lamas fight, but with 1 second left.
Oh.
Flatlined. Flatlined. Absolutely done. Unconscious. They call the fight. I was like a little nervous when it happened. I'm like, please don't make that go to decision. That's a knockout. And it was a knockout. With 1 second left, I think the only other one was Yair Rodriguez and the Zombie.
Yeah.
I just... So special. I mean, I was screaming. You guys were screaming. Everybody was screaming when that happened.
Oh, my God. It was such an incredible moment that these next two fights that we're going to cover, it felt like...
Yeah.
It felt like we were watching the prelims.
I'm still kind of high from it.
Oh, my God.
And it's been a couple weeks or a week at least.
That's like... Oh. Anyway, I could go on about it for a half hour, but we've already gone on too long.
Zhang and Yan. Awesome women's fight. I thought it was going to be a little bit more of a war. I thought it was going to be like Joanna versus Wei Li. But Yan getting choked unconscious, coming back somehow, and still making it a fight, winning a round. I think she won one round.
Wei Li won 3 times.
Yeah.
She won by submission in the first round, TKO in the third round,
Yeah.
and by decision.
Yeah.
What the hell? It was incredible.
Awesome performance by Wei Li and Yan. I want to see them run that back. Both women put on an amazing fight. When people were like, the co-main's a women's fight, I'm like, these Chinese ladies are going to throw down. And they did. I was happy with that. It's hard when you just had the Max versus Justin, but...
What a fight.
The main event, honestly, I thought was perfect. I mean, I was laughing for like 30 minutes after this happened. It was more just funny, if anything, but... Watching Pereira get in there, stare him down, do his entrance. Jamal is like waving him over. They get in the cage. There's the only thing I remember is the illegal kick happens. Pereira's like, nuh-uh, let me cook. And then
Nah, brother.
Pop, sits him down, whack, 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 whack. It's like whack-a-mole. And then he's like, he emotes. I never saw him emote before. He doesn't emote.
Okay, so that's not an emote? Apparently.
Okay, yeah, you know what? If you count that, that's an emote.
He's kind of the emote king.
I guess. Izzy's kind of the emote king, but his are half cringe.
Okay, so just to put this into perspective, the shot that Alex Pereira landed, when people talk about landing punches, knockout blows, you talk about your pointer finger and your
top two
middle
knuckles.
finger. These top two knuckles, these are the knuckles that have probably they can withstand the most damage.
Structurally, they have they're the strongest.
They're
right?
the
You
strongest.
just look on your arm. Your pinky's actually very weak. There's a lot of give on your pinky. But he
pinky-
hit him with the bottom two knuckles.
Your pinky and your ring finger are probably your two weakest.
Yeah.
Because if I go to close
They
my
get broken
ring
most.
finger here, my pinky moves with it. It's like I can't really react to it.
Yeah, there's give to the
And
pinky.
I
There's
give
not
to my
give
pinky.
those.
It's just, it's not like a really strong part of the your hand.
Yeah.
Pereira, with his lean hand, the second weakest punch you can throw with your lead hand is a lead uppercut. The lead hook is very strong. You can push into it with your shoulder.
To be fair, it was kind of in between a
boom.
hook and an uppercut, but yeah, it was more
Yeah.
uppercut.
But when you're going in the uppercut motion and you land with the two weakest knuckles in your hand and you flatline, didn't quite flatline, but you drop someone like Jamal Hill, who has never been dropped in MMA, I don't think, at that point.
Never been knocked out, that's for sure.
Never been knocked out. I don't think he's ever been dropped
I
in
don't
the
think
UFC.
so either.
With the two weakest knuckles,
Yeah.
I believe Pereira's like that punch record that he landed. I understand it at this point.
Because
As
Eddie
much as
Hall
I
just
don't want to
broke it.
believe it,
Yeah, but that power lifter just broke his record. I don't know if I trust the cube yet. I don't know.
but I tell you what,
But I agree. His power is top 5 maybe ever in the sport. It's up there.
The precision mixed in with power, I don't think we've ever seen.
And the stiffness.
The thing is, like, you look on, like, people that fight with precision, it's, like, usually like a line like this, and people that fight with power, a line like this, but they never really mix. Like, the guys that are power punchers and that are accurate,
For the most part, yeah.
they don't really mix. Pereira's, like, the first guy that, like, apexes both at their limit
Yeah.
in the UFC.
Yeah. I think it's the stiffness, too. I mean, we could break down his striking all day, but the way he lands is so... not stiff in a bad way, but it's just hard. Like, you know how you get, like, a stiff jab from somebody, and you're like, that's a much stronger jab than I'm used to? It's like Pereira's every punch is like that.
That's like my dad. Anyway, we'll get to that another day. But,
Sausage
yeah,
fingers.
just Pereira, it's amazing. His come up all the way.
Winning the belts that fast. What a speed running the UFC. We've never seen him do mixed martial arts in his prime. His entire prime was spent kickboxing and being an alcoholic, which, like, oh, man, if we got him in his prime, who knows? Anyways, UFC 300, an amazing card. I know a lot of you guys probably have that as number one, but for us, we have a certain card that we have very fond memories with. It happened November 4th, 2017, was that right, or 18?
2017, because I had to book I booked the tables for us at Wild Wings.
Yes.
And we were not 18 yet, so I asked, can we watch the fights here? I have a table of 10 or 12 at that time.
There was a lot of us, yeah.
There's 12 of us, I believe.
10 or 12, yeah.
And I'm like, can we watch the fights here? Like, do we have to be over the age of 18 to stay the night? Like, watch the whole card? And they said no. So I was like, yes, because I believe you were still in grade 12.
We both were.
We were both in grade 12.
We graduated together. So, yeah, we both would have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, of course...
Surprisingly, I wasn't dumb enough to go another year. I was barely smart enough to graduate the same year as Braden.
The card in which we are referring to had 3 title fights on it. We'll get to how they all played out, but it was UFC 217. To us, just the memories we have with it subjectively, it's our favorite card of all time. So let's quickly run through it. We have Zabi versus Ramos.
Whoa. Let me enunciate the names here.
Okay, you go. I'll stop butchering. I'm sorry.
Zahabi versus
that's much
Ramos. Olenek versus Blades.
Actually, it's Olenek.
Shut up. Brown versus Mickey Gall.
Gale.
Randy Brown versus Mickey Gall. Randy Brown was not supposed to win. He wins by decision. Oven St. Peru versus Corey Anderson. Corey Anderson was supposed to win. St. Peru wins by knockout.
Yes.
Walt Harris versus Mark Godbeer.
God beer.
Can you Google who won this fight? It says Walt Harris lost by DQ. I just want to make sure it's right.
Okay.
James Vick versus Joe Duffy. Wow. Last second of round 2, hits him with an uppercut, knocks him out. I started to become a James Vick fan. By the way, not a good idea.
Didn't pay off. He has disqualification.
Yeah, okay, so Mark Godbeer did win that. I don't know how that fight ended. I don't think we were paying attention to that fight because we didn't really care about that one.
Yeah, we were talking to people.
Paulo Costa versus Johnny Hendricks. Loved that fight. Hate Johnny Hendricks. He's a drug cheat. Paulo Costa beat the snot out of him. Hendricks sucks.
Holy.
Yeah, I'm coming out hot. I don't care.
I liked Johnny.
Shut up.
Hey,
I'm just kidding.
No.
He is a fun fighter to watch when he's not
Beating your favorite fighter?
He didn't. So shut up. He won 3 rounds. If you listened without the commentators, GSP won. Anyway. We're going to move on from that. Wonderboy Thompson versus Jorge Masvidal. Surprisingly entertaining. The scorecards may say that Stephen Thompson won decisively, but he almost got knocked out in the second round.
That's close.
So that was a really fun fight. Jorge Masvidal showed that like street kind of boxing vibe to him, and This was the last fight that he lost. He went 2 years off and then came back and fought Darren Till and went on that awesome winning streak, like when he became bigger than Nate Diaz at a time.
Yeah, he's huge.
Then, wow, what a fight. Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Rose Namajunas.
Thug Rose.
Thug-
Rose.
Thug Rose.
What a call. I'm not a fan of Rose. I'm a huge fan of Joanna, but I have to admit, what a special moment.
Oh my God. When she knocked out Joanna Jędrzejczyk
In
in
round
the
one.
first round with a left hook, and DC's going nuts, hands on his head going, Thug Rose! Thug Rose! Nobody really cared about Thug Rose before this fight.
Nope.
Up until DC made that moment so special,
Yep.
it made Rose Namajunas like,
And her reciting like Bible verses in the weigh-ins.
oh my God.
Yeah,
I will say,
there's an aura to that fight.
as much as I like to like crap on Rose Namajunas every now and then, Daniel Cormier,
Him too, yeah.
he makes such great moments sometimes.
Yeah.
Like that moment will live on
Yeah.
till the end of time for women's strawweight history anyway.
Yeah. Awesome fight call.
Is the first time the strawweight belt has moved on, or
Yeah.
second technically.
Yeah. But yeah, one upset for a belt. Get on to the next belt.
Yeah.
We had TJ versus Cody.
Cody Garbrandt versus TJ Dillashaw. Guess which fighter I hate and which one I love?
Honestly, not a fan of it either anymore.
I'm a fan of TJ. I didn't like when he did the EPOs
Yeah.
personally,
I left a sour taste in my mouth.
but I will say at that time, was I the biggest TJ fan?
Yeah.
I
was
absolutely.
Yeah, I was on his train too. And the build-up was amazing. The trash talk.
Oh
Both
my
guys were around the same age. The way Cody won the belt was like, people joke and say he has a 25-minute prime, but it was one of the best performances I ever saw in my life. And then, TJ just being a little bit more well-rounded.
But the thing is, like, that first round, Cody Garbrandt was taking over, and at the end of the first round, Cody drops him hard.
That was so close.
The bell saves him.
Yeah.
And the fact that TJ Dillashaw was able to come in sneaky, like a Dominic Cruz,
Yeah.
but just a little bit younger, a little bit faster, throw that head kick in the mix, throw in the left hook, drop down Cody Garbrandt, who had never been like rocked in professional MMA.
Yeah.
He had that one amateur bout. I think it was his first or second fight in amateurs where he's knocked out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it. And TJ Dillashaw was able to find that button and put him out.
Yeah, so you have the fight almost ending. We're super nervous, and then the way he throws those head kicks too, it's almost like Robert Whittaker. They're so sneaky.
Yeah.
And then the way
That's
that
a perfect comparison. I never even thought about that.
Yeah, that was like a perfect ending to that fight. And then we get into the main event where
Just wait.
oh, we still got more.
Rose Namajunas versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk, first round.
Mm-hmm.
Cody Garbrandt versus TJ Dillashaw, second round.
Oh yeah, that's cool. That works out.
Michael Bisping versus George Rush St. Pierre.
Yeah. So this is big for us. Like GSP's his favorite fighter of all time.
No,
Well,
Anderson Silva.
close.
GSP number 2.
Close. He's probably my third behind like Jones and Habib, but obviously being from Canada, there's that connection that we have, right? It's like a hometown boy. We're cheering for the home team. So GSP coming back, me and him were talking about it for like a year about GSP's comeback. Who's he going to fight? How's it going to go down? Can he win a belt at 185? Is that too big for him?
The scariest part was thinking he was going to have to fight Robert Whittaker at one point.
Yeah. Yeah.
But thankfully, Robert Whittaker got hurt.
Yeah.
As much as you hate to say it.
Yeah. 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 And we both really liked Mike at the time, too. So we're obviously cheering for GSP. The fight starts, and
Can
it's...
I add one more thing? That trifecta of middleweights, how could you hate any of them?
Yeah.
Robert Whittaker, Bisping, GSP. The nicest guys, best guys to vote for.
Yeah. That's true. So the fight started. I think at the time I wanted GSP to win, Canadian boy. But at the time, just to make it a little bit more fun, I think I was taking Bisping just to have something going on there. Sometimes I do that. I'll just take the opposite fighter just to have something. But yeah, Michael looked pretty good the first 2 rounds, and then GSP. Talk about how he got to that finish.
GSP, it's like I think he knew ahead of time that he was blind in one eye, or at least couldn't see in the one side.
The aliens told him.
So when he comes in there, like in the 3rd round, he's like, he knows he has to box at this point. So he kind of gets Bisping close to the cage, and he finds that opening to go 1, 2, and he knew Bisping was going to react, so he slips under, left hook, boom, hits him on the blind side, drops him bad, steps over him, knows that Bisping's going to get up a certain way, and he practiced this certain, he pretty much just stepped over into a perfect back mount, and gets the rear naked choke, and puts him out cold.
Beautiful.
Bisping wasn't able to even tap.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And then the earlier in the fight, the elbows from bottom too. That was pretty special.
Yeah, because GSP got him down, but so Bisping threw an illegal threw an illegal elbow, and broke one of GSP's vertebrae in the 1st round. So he wasn't able to actually posture properly or anything because he didn't have any proper neck posture in his upper spine. So it looked really weird when he was on the ground, when he was on top, as Bisping was mashing him up with elbows because he was so in pain and he couldn't posture up without yelping pretty much. And he was able to just withstand that. Going to the 2nd round, I remember at the end of the 1st round, I think he landed a Superman jab and a spinning hook kick. And he was looking sharp. 2nd round looked really bad for GSP. And for the way that he came back in the 3rd round, I thought he was running out of stamina. Yeah. And it's he hit another gear in the 3rd round where he's I'm not going to worry about output. I'm going to worry about timing. And
what I will say, too, is there's 2 fighters who I watched come back from long layoffs, go into championship fights, and win dominantly, and it's GSP and John Jones. And those 2 performances, the one versus Gane and then this one versus Bisping, are some of my favorite performances of all time because it really shows just why those guys are the GOATs, why they really are at the pinnacle of MMA. They can take that much time off, they come back, and just the mentality's there to win fights. And this was the most special card I think we've ever seen. I mean, watching that at Wild Wing with 12 other friends, 3 different title changes, it was so special. 300 was close, but I don't see anything topping that for a while.
Yeah.
That was pretty special. We were at that age, too. We were just so into it. Training, getting other people training. Something special about that one.
And also, at that time, those matchups were, the most skill-based matchups you could make at those weight divisions at that time.
Yeah.
If Luke Rockhold was still champion versus GSP, it would be a much higher skill level.
Yeah.
But having GSP versus Michael Bisping, it was a perfect swan song for
it added
both
some
of them.
trash talk, so it got that building up. GSP was getting trash talked by Mike. You're drunk and all that. So there was that, and then it made it, I don't want to say it made it winnable for GSP, but it was, slightly easier because Bisping's a little bit older than Whitaker or Rockhold.
I'm going to be honest. Whitaker or Rockhold would have probably beat GSP at that time.
Yeah.
Which I would have hated to watch.
Who knows, though? GSP's special. He's got a special mentality.
Yeah.
But yeah. Any other thoughts you have on these cards?
No, I just got to say, I mean, watching, just going through the list of, what cards we would put up, it made me realize, I think I've been watching UFC too young.
Probably, yeah.
Everybody I know is, just getting to the UFC now, and I'm like,
yeah.
You guys even know who Tito Ortiz is?
Yeah.
Most people I know don't even know who Tito is.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, we've been watching it a while.
Let
like
alone
I said,
Randy.
Yeah. One of my earliest memories are those icicle shorts and the flame shorts, and that was Chuck versus Tito, and I think that was 2006. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been having fights on TV since I was 6 years old. Just wild to think about. But
The amount of Spike specials I've watched, I'm gonna find at least an excuse to get Rich Franklin in on one of our lists. Because Rich Franklin's one of my favorite fighters of all time.
Yeah.
But nobody knows who he is.
yeah,
He's like, oh, that's the president of ONE FC if you're like a fight nerd.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. We might do one of those. Cover the best cards before UFC 100. That could be a good follow up.
Yeah.
Go back and watch some of the old fights. Another one I was thinking about doing for you guys is our top 10 or top 15 fights of all time.
Yeah.
We could go back, watch those in detail, take some notes, give you guys a little bit more of a detailed analysis about those fights, and relive them for ourselves. So, yeah, I think that would be a slightly shorter video than this one. This one took a lot longer than I thought.
It was so much fun, though.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys had fun too. Don't forget to let us know down in the comments. What are your top 5 or top 10 or top 15 UFC cards of all time? If you're a super fan out there, let us know, because I love seeing that from you guys. And this is by no means an objective list. Like, making this list, we had so many ones where we're like, does this go over this? It's hard to make an objective list.
It got heated. It got heated at
Yeah,
one
we
point.
actually got into a fight. We got into a 5-round fight over placements. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed. Do you have any closing comments?
My last closing comment is,
Oh boy.
please like, subscribe, and hit the notification button. Because if you ain't listening to deep thought, you ain't listening to nothing.
Thanks for the sick outro. I'll leave it at that. Thank you guys for watching as always. It means the world to me. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Peace.